Freedom, man. That's what it's all about. You've got to groove on freedom, like the good book says.
Welcome. You are listening to What on Earth is Happening. This show will discuss the topics of human consciousness, mind control, natural law, the occult, and all issues that affect the freedom of the people of Earth. What on Earth is Happening will endeavor to shine light upon the darkness of our world and to offer empowering solutions to the problems we face as humanity approaches its critical moment of choice. And now, here is your host, Mark Passio.
Welcome one and all. You're watching What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. Ladies and gentlemen, government is slavery. And here on What on Earth is Happening, we are ending slavery one mind at a time. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Today is episode number 251 of What on Earth is Happening. It is Sunday, April 24th, 2022. We have a great show lined up for you here today. We are going to be exploring in a beginner's and an introductory sense the occult philosophy known as Thelema. Really, for the first time officially here on What on Earth is Happening. I covered it in another podcast with Bob from Cincinnati on his show Occult Empire years ago. But we'll be breaking down the occult philosophy called Thelema and what it's really about on this very program. So you're going to want to stay tuned in for that. That's coming up in a short while. I do want to switch over to my laptop and go through a couple of housekeeping announcements before we jump into the main material for today. Last week we were off for Easter. I hope everybody had a good Easter, and we're back into programming this week, and the How to Become the True Media seminar is coming at us rapidly. We are filling up the seats of the seminar. So let me jump over to the laptop. Thank you to Will Keller for the great artwork, as always. Again, the topic for today, the occult philosophy of Thelema. It's going to be something that some people are going to get, and hopefully they will research more deeply into it. And some people will never understand. They will insist that this is something that I shouldn't even be discussing or talking about, and insist it's what other people have told them that it is, instead of them looking at it for themselves and deciding what it really is from personal first-hand investigation. So we're on the new format, of course, for a 6-month schedule from January through June, after which I will be hosting and teaching the How to Become the True Media seminar. Again, How to Become the True Media 2022 coming at us this July. Seats are filling up, so if you want to reserve your spot, enrollment is now open, and it closes on July 4th of this year. That's 1 week before the seminar begins. This is a seminar that will teach you everything that you need to know regarding how to do what I do. If you want to start a video podcast, if you want to start an audio podcast, if you want to start a website, if you want to put videos out and talk about what's going on in the world and help to enlighten other people, and help to make them aware of what's really taking place instead of what the lying prostitute mainstream media tells them. This is the seminar for you. If you feel like you have gotten the material that I've been discussing and teaching to date, but you yourself know that you need to teach it to others, and you just don't know how to go about doing that and how to begin that process, this is the seminar. This is what will teach you all of those steps from the very beginning. It's a 23-week intensive seminar. We're going to be talking about a lot of different technological aspects from, like I said, everything from the file system, how to organize files, to making an outline of your thoughts, to making presentations, slides like this, graphics, up through audio, video, and making your own website to keep a central repository of all your work and distribute it out there to others. So the seminar this year is taking place every Monday evening, 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time, from Monday, July 11th through Monday, December 12th, 2022. That's a total of 23 class sessions. There is limited space available in this technology seminar. We're hosting it on Telegram this year. A couple of questions have come up. You do need a cell phone to at least get enrolled in the seminar. I really don't recommend taking the seminar on a smartphone, but you're going to need a cell phone at least to get enrolled, because a cell phone is required to download the Telegram mobile app, after which you can download the Telegram desktop app, which I recommend taking the course on. And in order to get that linked to your mobile account, you do need to download the smartphone app. So there were a couple of questions regarding that. You do need a smartphone in order to get Telegram installed on your computer, on your desktop or laptop computer, because it makes you take a picture of the QR code, and that is how it links the desktop app to the mobile app. So I just wanted to put that out there for anyone that did have a question regarding what is needed. All that is needed is a desktop or a laptop computer that is capable of running the Telegram desktop app, but you do need a cell phone to get registered and to get the Telegram desktop app linked to the mobile app. That just should be clarified, and hopefully that takes care of that. For more information on how to become the True Media and to click through to the enrollment page, visit howtobecomthetruemedia.com. Do not wait. Class seats are filling up. I'm still running the t-shirt special clearance. All t-shirts on What on Earth is Happening, 40 to 50% off until stock is gone. I think we have about 10 t-shirts left total. So get them now. They're obviously in limited sizes and colors now that we're rapidly running out. I'll be putting a new t-shirt order in the next week or two, and we should have those shirts in probably about a month. So we'll be back totally in stock with all designs and colors. But if you want to take advantage of the clearance special, 40 to 50% off. All regular t-shirts, short sleeve t-shirts, are over 50% off, about 51 to 52%. And all long sleeve t-shirts that we have left in stock are about 41% off. So take advantage of this clearance special while there are still a few shirts left. You can visit gifts.whatonearthishappening.com to take advantage of that t-shirt clearance. Check out the One Great Work Network, onegreatworknetwork.com. 60 phenomenal content creators all teaching natural law, objective morality, teaching people what's really going on in our world, teaching the occult and the occult sciences. Absolutely. Definitely check out and support all the great content creators on the network, and do support them. They all have donation pages as well. So please support them individually. That's what makes this network keep going. It is entirely supported by viewer donations. We don't charge for anything on the network. No one is charged or has to pay any fees. It's completely open, 100% free. We're trying to keep it that way, so do support everyone who's on the network. And if you're inclined to make a donation to the network, there is a donate page for that as well on the main website at onegreatworknetwork.com. The What on Earth is Happening IPFS project is still going. If you're interested in taking part in it, visit whatonearthishappening.com/IPFS. The main requirement to run an IPFS server for distributing What on Earth is Happening material, if you're going to be officially involved in doing that through me, is that you need a home internet connection of 200 megabits per second or greater in the upstream or upload direction. If you don't have that, that will not qualify you to take part in this project. But if you do, you can fill in the form and get the preliminary requirements and technical specifications of what you're going to need at whatonearthishappening.com/IPFS. If there is time today, I will be taking calls on Discord. I don't know if we will have time, but possibly. Depends on how quickly I go through the material. If not, we'll definitely do an all-call-in show on this topic at some point. I may extend the topic into a second week. We'll see how things go. I may want to do more reading into some seminal works of Thelema if I don't have time to do that today. Hopefully there will be time. But if we have some extra time, I'll be taking calls today. You can go to whatonearthishappening.com/Discord. That will enter you into our call-in room on the server. And you could also visit the show page at whatonearthishappening.com/show. And there is a Discord widget on the show page as well. Let me just briefly step out of my slides before continuing. I want to just check something really quick. Yes, I wasn't in the call-in room on the server. I just fixed that. All right, let's go back over to the slides. There we go. All right. The ARC 2.0 drive is still available. This offer is ongoing. People take me up on this just about every single day. I am very impressed with how many people have requested the ARC offer and taken advantage of it. And I am can almost barely keep up with them sometimes. Sometimes I have 3 or 4 or 5 in the house at the same time. The ARC drive is a collection of all of my research data, not my material, but an eclectic array of researchers over the years that I've been downloading since I've been online, since back in the mid-90s. And this 2 terabyte hard drive contains 26,000 audio files, 9,500 books, and 3,400 videos from my own personal archive of research and data gathered over the years, and copied onto the 2 terabyte drive that you provide. If you want to take advantage of this unique offer that gets around internet censorship, doesn't require searching the web, doesn't require downloading, it's all there on a drive that you can connect to any computer, any computing device, Mac, Windows, Linux. Visit whatonearthishappening.com/ARC and fill in the form and download the PDF document with the shipping instructions on how to take advantage of the ARC drive offer. People are doing this every single day. I thank everybody who has taken part in the ARC offer. We've gotten a lot of information out there to people this way. So check it out, whatonearthishappening.com/ARC. If you want hard copies of my work in flash drive format, in HD or DVD format, and other items such as t-shirts, stickers, the complete One Great Work collection. It's a flash drive with all of my data all of my material personally that I have ever done since I've started What on Earth is Happening. That's the One Great Work collection drive. My natural law documentary is up there. We have coasters, we have buttons, ancillary items like that, keychains. Visit gifts.whatonearthishappening.com. That is the site of What on Earth is Happening donation gifts. In return for your voluntary donation, I will send you the gifts of your choosing. Gifts.whatonearthishappening.com. Check it out. If you prefer to make a straight donation to the What on Earth is Happening cause and the One Great Work Network, of course, you could do that in many ways through our donation page at whatonearthishappening.com/donate. Many, many ways to make a donation there. Cash App, GPay, Wise, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Ethereum, Dash, and our Amazon wish list for technology, which is currently empty. We have the technology we need right now. There's nothing that What on Earth is Happening currently is wanting for technologically. So that's a good thing, and thank you to everyone who has made generous donations over the years. Also, check and money order is there available as it is for enrollment in the How to Become the True Media seminar. And many people have taken advantage of that and have enrolled that way already this year. So that's all the housekeeping announcements for now. Let's jump into our main material, which is the occult philosophy of Thelema. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the pronunciation of Thelema. A lot of people out there say Thelema. I hear this all the time because they're pronouncing the second E. Thelema is spelled Thelema. And in Greek, the second E is a long A sound. If you write the word Thelema in Greek, it is theta, epsilon, lambda, eta. Okay? Mu, alpha. It is not another epsilon, or it is not an iota or an iota, which would be pronounced Thelema or Thelema. It is a long A sound. The eta sound in Thelema, when you see it written in Greek, as I'll have it up there in a moment, that eta, that's how you pronounce the character in ancient Greek, eta, and then it is written in English as an H, and in ancient Greek, eta is pronounced A, long A. So without a doubt, unequivocally, definitively, it is correct, it is true that the word Thelema is pronounced just as I pronounced it, Thelema. Okay? I hear people who claim to be Thelemites pronouncing it Thelema, and that's just a bastardization of the pronunciation. Here we're seeing the main symbol of the philosophy. Some people would refer to it as a religion. I don't. I consider it an occult philosophy, a philosophy that is born out of many other schools of philosophical occult thought and other occultic traditions, and sort of is an aggregate of many of them. This is the symbol known as the unicursal hexagram, which simply means that it is a hexagram or two interlaced triangles of a sort, representing the chalice and the blade, the sacred feminine wed together with the sacred masculine, the chalice being the sacred feminine womb or cup, and then the sacred masculine being the blade or phallic symbol. We've talked about this symbolism pretty much endlessly on What on Earth is Happening in the early parts of the series when I break down symbolism. And by the way, this show is cumulative material, so I want to say at the beginning of just about every show, you have to go back and you have to listen to the shows in order. This is episode number 251. Without the benefit of understanding the other 250 episodes, this show is not going to make as much sense to you. Each show of What on Earth is Happening does not stand alone. There is prerequisite material to understand in the earlier episodes. So if you are a new viewer or listener, you should go back to the earliest episode, show number 1, and you should listen in order from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, etc., at your own pace. That is the only way you're going to gain maximum benefit and maximum clarity and maximum understanding of what I talk about here on this program. So, going back to the symbolism of Thelema, the unicursal hexagram is one of its main symbols because it represents the balancing of the sacred masculine and sacred feminine energies in sacred union. The alchemical wedding, as it has been known, as it has been called in different occult traditions. And it is a little bit different from the traditional usage of the combination of the chalice and blade in what is known as the Seal of Solomon, or the six-pointed star. And Aleister Crowley, the founder of the tradition of Thelema, who we will talk about a little bit. I'm not going to get very, very deeply into Crowley and his life. Crowley, however anyone wants to pronounce that. I generally pronounce it Crowley, but we'll get into Crowley and his life, and we won't get that much into it. I'm going to talk about how you can't equivalate Crowley and Thelema. Crowley may be the founder and popularizer of the Thelemic tradition in the world of the occult, but he does not represent the be-all and end-all of what Thelema is, nor should anyone look to his life as an example and attempt to live according to how Crowley lived. That would be a very bad way of going about representing, exploring the Thelemic tradition, etc. So we'll get into the details of that in a moment, because that's one of the first things people are going to ask. But I want to speak a little bit to the symbolism, since this is how I'm entering the topic with this slide. Crowley wanted to unify the chalice and the blade in a way that it hadn't been before with the Seal of Solomon, in which they are each represented separately. They either overlap or interlock in that symbol. He wanted to write it down on paper without picking up the pencil or pen that he's writing with. So that's what is meant by unicursal. It's drawn with one movement. Okay, you could draw this symbol with one movement. It joins itself. It's not broken. Okay, so I'll put the cursor here so you could see it. If you started in this corner, you go up here to the top and then down to this corner and then over, and then you draw then the chalice. And then you're back where you began. So that's what is meant by unicursal. It is in one movement of the pen or pencil on the paper. And then in the middle of it at the heart, and this is a point of contention as well in the symbolism, there is a 5-petaled flower. Some people present this symbol inverted, with the top point of the 5-petaled flower pointed down. I don't see that as the correct orientation, but people argue this over and over again, and you will see it in the Thelemic tradition in both orientations, pointed up and down. To me, and this should be no surprise to anyone that knows my work, I would say the correct orientation is with the 5th point of the petal pointing upward, because this puts the orientation of the petal of the flower in its correct orientation, because that 5th petal represents spirit in the tradition of elements alchemically. You have earth, air, water, and fire as being the elements that make up the material plane. And then, of course, spirit is the 5th element. Or you could see that as love or just consciousness. And that always should be above the others, not in the sense that it is, quote, more important, but it is the unifying aspect of it. It is something that should not be in a downward position where the physical elements take precedent over the spiritual. So we talked about that a lot when we talked about the 5-pointed pentagram and how it should be always in an upright orientation. Satanists will use it in the inverted orientation. And that is going to bring us, that kind of completes what I wanted to say about the unicursal hexagram and why it is the sort of foundational and known symbol of the Thelemic tradition. But in talking about the correct orientation of that five-petaled flower in the heart of the universal hexagram, that sort of brings us to the next topic and point of contention when it comes to Thelema. What almost everybody is going to say is, why even discuss Thelema? Why delve into this topic, Mark? Isn't Thelema Satanism? Isn't that the stuff that Aleister Crowley was into? And wasn't Crowley himself a Satanist? Almost everybody who is unfamiliar with the tradition of Thelema and has not studied it in depth is going to come up with this very wording, this question, these questions that, it's one of the first things that people are going to ask. And unequivocally, without a shadow of a doubt, Thelema is not Satanism. They are entirely different things. Now, that does not mean that it cannot be perverted and used in a satanic way. Is Kabbalah Satanism? No, it is not. Can Kabbalah be used in a negative aspect, in a satanic aspect? Yes, it can. In the dark aspect of Kabbalah, that is known as Qliphoth. We've talked about that a little bit on previous episodes of What on Earth is Happening. The Qliphotic Kabbalah. Qliphotic Kabbalah is the inversion of true Kabbalistic tradition in occultism. Because if you know this knowledge, and you hold it, and you have a deep understanding of it, and you wanted to manipulate someone that has no understanding of it, that is possible to do if you're of that low consciousness. So, can Kabbalah be twisted and turned around and turned into a satanic tradition? Yes. Rosicrucianism is not Satanism. However, is there a dark side to that? Yes, there can be. Look at the people who put up the Georgia Guidestones and claimed that the person's name was R.C. Christian, or in other words, Rose Cross Christian, which is what a Rosicrucian is. A Christian of the Rose Cross, Rosicrucian, Rose Cross. After the allegorical founder of the Rose Cross tradition, the Rosicrucian tradition, Christian Rosenkreutz, Christian R.C. Again, that's who the Georgia Guidestones, which are clearly born of a satanic mindset to try to cull the population down to manageable numbers for the satanic elitists. So can Rosicrucianism be turned around and made into a dark tradition? Yes, it can. That does not mean there is not a pure, unadulterated form of it. Look at Freemasonry. We taught Freemasonry for a few months here on What on Earth is Happening in many episodes. Some high-level Freemasons got in touch with me after those broadcasts, and even subsequently later, years later, and told me, you've taught me more about Freemasonry than all my years in the lodge. And I've had people personally who belong to lodge systems of Freemasonry tell me that. Because many of their traditions have turned to the dark side. They're not teaching the esoteric traditions of Freemasonry. They're a disgrace, most of the lodges. Let me tell you what I want. I'm going off on an aside about this because I'm trying to emphasize the point, first of all, that every occult tradition can have a dark side because it's about knowledge and how it is used. That does not make Thelema Satanism just because Crowley, as a man, failed to stay upon the path of Thelema with his earthly self and his earthly will. Crowley is no more Thelema, ladies and gentlemen, than any worshipful master at a Masonic lodge anywhere in the world is Freemasonry. Crowley is no more Thelema than Mark Passio is natural law. What hubris I would have to claim that I am natural law. Of course I'm not. I can understand how it works and relate that to others. But that doesn't make me that thing. So Crowley is not the tradition of Thelema, and anybody that insists that he is sorely mistaken and or lying. But this is the problem that happens, and I do want to go off on an aside regarding Freemasonry, as a matter of fact. Crowley integrated a lot of different traditions into Thelema, Rosicrucianism, Kabbalah, of course, Tarot, absolutely. We'll show a couple of the tarot cards from his own personal deck, the Thoth deck, in this broadcast. And again, he fell from the path of Thelema, and some would call that a satanic path. He went down the left-hand path. But that doesn't make the tradition and the philosophy of Thelema satanic. Again, let's say I fall from the path of natural law, and that's absolutely possible. Anything can happen in an individual's life. That does not make everything I said about natural law invalid. Crowley falling from the path of Thelema does not make what he said about what is true regarding the philosophy of Thelema and the path of Thelema invalid. It just makes him an asshole, and it makes him having made poor choices in life and having done bad things. That does not invalidate the philosophy. This is a very mature mindset that has to be, first of all, developed upon the part of the potential student of an occult tradition like Thelema. That's why I tell people this is last in the line. Study simpler occult traditions. I like to tell people study the tarot, honestly. If you're going to delve into an occult tradition first when you know nothing about it, the symbolism of the tarot is very neutral. And when you decode it, it teaches such wonderful things that it's a great place to start as far as I'm concerned. It can get somewhat involved and complicated too as well, but that just challenges your mind. Kabbalah is the same way. There's so many different symbolic, overtones to it, tons of symbolism, wording, cross correlations. You need correlative thinking to understand it. And it challenges the mind, and it brings the brain hemispheres into unison with each other, gets them firing on all cylinders. That's why I love the Kabbalistic tradition. That's why when I decided what occult traditions am I going to really teach in earnest here on What on Earth is Happening, Tarot and Kabbalah were two of the first that needed to be studied in conjunction with each other. That's very true of Thelema. You're not going to understand the Thelemic tradition without a firm foundation in other forms of occultism such as Tarot, Kabbalah, Freemasonry, and Rosicrucianism especially. So let's clear up this question once and for all and get that out of the way. You could say Crowley fell from the Thelemic path and lived a satanic lifestyle for a good amount of time. But do not equate Crowley with Thelema. Once again, we have to take the very adult perspective and attempt to separate the human being from the information that they espouse or that they are talking about or that they are trying to communicate. So people may not like Mark Passio, and that's fine. I'm not required to be liked. I don't require anyone to like me. But is what I'm saying about natural law true? Yes, it is. So, again, Crowley is no more the equivalent to Thelema than Mark Passio is the equivalent to natural law. If you don't like hearing about natural law from Mark Passio, go learn about it from someone else. So, this is the first thing that has to be understood, is you have to take the person separately from the tradition. Look at Freemasonry. Can you simply attribute all of the Freemasonic tradition and all of the philosophy contained therein to the lodge system? The lodge system is not Freemasonry. This is why I've told people in studying Freemasonry and in exploring it and teaching it, you don't need the lodge system. The lodge system is largely junk today. However, I want to make an aside on this very point, and especially talking about Freemasonry, which is definitely a simpatico influence with Thelema. I would personally like to be able to teach inside the Freemasonic Lodge system. So I'm going to put this idea, offer, however you want to look at it, out there. If a worshipful master of their lodge anywhere in the world wishes to confer upon me the honorary 33rd degree of Freemasonry, I would graciously accept that conference of the 33rd degree because, and quite frankly, I feel that it should be done. And I'm not directly even like asking or begging for that. I'm saying I think it should be done for a reason, for a specific reason. The lodge system of Freemasonry is in absolute junk disarray. Anybody who even speaks with anybody within the systems of Freemasonry at work today in the world not only knows this, they know it's way worse than what I'm saying. And you know this. If you don't know it, you're just dumb, son. Okay? You should know it if you're involved in any capacity. So my kind of idea and or offer for the lodge system is, if a worshipful master of a current lodge, a current worshipful master, were to confer upon me the 33rd honorary degree for what I have taught regarding Freemasonry during my career in broadcasting on What on Earth is Happening and the other lectures that I've given and presentations I've done, in for the clarification that I have given to the Freemasonic tradition, and also even helping people to separate it from the lodge system. Once again, Crowley is no more Thelema than the lodge system is Freemasonry. They cannot be considered equivalents of each other. They are not equal to each other. Okay, that's the sign there on the slide there for not equal to. Crowley is not equal to Thelema. The lodge system is not equal to Freemasonry. Mark Passio is not equal to natural law. You have to separate human beings from philosophical understanding and ideas. They're not equivalent. And that's discernment. That comes with discernment. Once again, this show is going to fly over most people's heads. I'm going to lose most people. And that's okay. It's not meant for everybody. It's not meant for most people. It's meant for the people that are going to exercise the discernment to really hear what I'm saying and get it. But going back to this idea of, if I were to be conferred the honorary 33rd degree of Freemasonry without even entering the lodge system, like was done for Manly P. Hall, like was done for many other people who the 33rd honorary degree was conferred to, what it would make possible is I, as an individual, would then be able to walk into any lodge system in anywhere in the world, any lodge system in the world, I would be able to walk into, make an agreement or arrangement with people who want to improve their lodge system by teaching natural law, and I could go into those environments and potentially teach an entire class on natural law for one of the lodge meetings. And I'd be willing to do that. I would be willing to offer of my time in that capacity to make a extra special, one-of-a-kind slide presentation specifically about the esoteric tradition of Freemasonry, its symbolism, its allegories, and burst that onto the minds of the people in the lodge system that perhaps are not getting it within the teachings of the lodge. And I know they're not. And the people out there listening to me who are involved in those lodge systems, absolutely know they're not getting it to the extent that they need. Because I've known a lot of Freemasons over the years, and they've all told me the exact same thing, and none of it's getting any better. It's been actually declining and getting rapidly worse as things continue to go on, as more and more influence of political systems and financial systems come into place and into that whole networking arena of the lodge system. So my offer is, it's an offer of my time and knowledge and the way that I do things and my aesthetic that I can bring to the table in a presentation format. If someone who is a worshipful master of their lodge wants to confer the honorary 33rd degree upon me, I will teach in the lodge system wherever someone wants to have me to help more deeply the members of that lodge understand the allegorical and symbolic aspects of esoteric Masonry, esoteric Freemasonry. So I just want to put that out there. But going back to this concept is, people have to stop taking the mindset of, I've heard really bad things about this person, that person, the other person, so I'm not going to look into the philosophy at all. Let me tell you exactly what that is and exactly what you're playing into the hands of. You're playing into the hands of the dark occultists by doing that. The Satanists and the dark occultists want exactly that. Let me say that again so that you fully understand this. The Satanists and the dark occultists who are really running the world want that exact position, that they want that exact mindset to take place in people's minds, because they don't want you understanding Thelema. They don't want you understanding tarot. They don't want you understanding Rosicrucianism. They don't want you understanding Freemasonry. They don't want you understanding Kabbalah. They certainly don't want you understanding Thelema, because Thelema could be the concrescence and aggregate combined expression of all the occult traditions that have come before it. I consider it one of the most advanced occult philosophies personally. I consider that when I really, really deeply understood Thelema and what it was really trying to teach philosophically, my consciousness expanded so greatly at that point, and I got so many things that I didn't get with clarity and with precision previously until I really understood Thelema. So it's been a profound difference maker for me in my life. And I think it can be in other person's lives if they learn how to separate Crowley from the true Thelemic philosophy. If you could bring that discernment to the table as an adult thinker and do that without just single-mindedly focusing on Crowley's deeds in life, which, once again, no one is telling you to emulate. That is the last thing I would ever do. You do not want to live like this guy lived. You do not want to do some of the things this guy did. He was a gray occultist at best. Certainly not a light occultist. Was definitely an elitist. Definitely worked for intelligence agencies while he was alive. I believe long term he did want true freedom to express. However, his behaviors were not in alignment with that. And he did many unsavory things that I would never tell you to emulate or use his life example as a guide. Certainly don't use the man as a life example. It's the idea of do as he said, not as he did. Because his writings are profound and deeply spiritually awakening if one understands them. He wrote in a lot of code, he wrote in a lot of cipher, he wrote in a lot of numerology and a lot of allegory. He wanted to encode it because he wanted people to work for the understanding. So everything was a symbol, everything was an array of numbers and meaning, a correlation, correlative meaning. He didn't want to explain things straight out, to de-occult them. See, that's what we're doing here on What on Earth is Happening. This is a de-occulting broadcast. Crowley still wanted the information occulted and kept for the initiates who he felt deserved it. He was still of that Hermetic mindset, right? Again, Hermeticism. You could look at that tradition. You could look at that philosophy, which is wonderful. But is there a dark side to the Hermetic tradition? Yes, there is. If you don't understand that, you don't understand the occult. The occult is a dual-edged sword of knowledge. It can cut both ways. And even something like Hermeticism, which people somehow insist was the one that remained pure throughout the ages, can be turned into a dark tradition and an elitist tradition. They didn't get the job done, right? Did the Rosicrucians get the job done? Is humanity free as a result of the Rosicrucians putting their knowledge out into the world? Is humanity free as a result of what Crowley did with Thelema? Is humanity free with what the Lodge system has done with Freemasonry? Is humanity free as a result of what the Hermeticists did with the Hermetic tradition and philosophy? No. All of them fell short. All of them failed. That doesn't mean we shouldn't study the traditions. That doesn't mean we shouldn't separate the people from the traditions and the philosophy that they espoused. And it means that clearly higher level understanding and knowledge that needs to be built on those foundations is required. And that's part of what I'm attempting to do with What on Earth is Happening, and have been since day one. And also trying to teach people the way that people have gone about teaching the occult has failed. It has not resulted in human freedom. We are deeper in bondage than we were before. And then people want to still insist we got to keep this information from people that don't deserve it. Wrong. It needs to be made common sense knowledge in an egalitarian fashion, meaning it's out there for anyone who wants it. And nobody holds it back from anybody else and considers themselves the gatekeepers or the holders of that knowledge until they deem other people fit for it. Crowley was an elitist like that, and I'm sure he took that from the Hermetic tradition. And it's a mistake. It was a mistake thousands of years ago. It was a mistake when Crowley did it in the early 1900s. And it's a mistake now to anybody still doing that ridiculous mindset of saying that this knowledge should be held for an elite few. Absolutely incorrect. It should be distributed widely and freely and made available for all so that it can become common sense. And that's the only way humanity is going to become free, is when this knowledge becomes common sense once again. Or perhaps for the first time in human history, is probably more accurate to say. So then if Crowley isn't Thelema, then what is Thelema? Well, Thelema, spelled in the Greek, theta, epsilon, lambda, and this is incorrect here. I have to correct this. I said it myself that it was... There it is. That is how it is spelled. I apologize for that. Let me see if I have that incorrect anywhere else, because I'm going to have to fix it. I'm going to just quickly fix that where I made the error in there putting an epsilon myself. So I was thinking about it, and that's what made me do it. I just want to make sure I don't have that like that anywhere else. Let me step out of the slides real quick to just go correct that. So, yeah, let's now that I'm bringing it up in Greek, I'm just going to step through the slides and just make sure I don't have that error anywhere else. I don't believe that I do. It looks like everywhere else that it was written, it is correct. So let me make sure. Yep. Everywhere else in the presentation, it's correct. So just on those two slides, I had it spelled with an epsilon. So let's jump back. I apologize for that. All right. There is the correct spelling. So this is written in the ancient Greek characters. That's a capital theta at the beginning, then epsilon, then lambda, then eta, then mu, then alpha. So these characters in Greek, the theta represents the TH sound, th, okay? Then you have the epsilon, which is the short E sound, eh. Then lambda, which is L in Greek. Then eta, that's this character right here that I'm underlining with my cursor. Sorry, right there. Next to this is the lambda, and then this is the eta right here. It looks like an elongated N, okay? Or an H kind of without the top piece of the H. It would be transliterated into English as an H. And then next to that there's mu, which is an M, and then alpha, which is A. So put read together, it's Thelema. T-H-E-L long A-M-A. Okay, Thelema. Thelema is an occult philosophy founded by Aleister Crowley in the early 1900s. One of the main tenets of Thelema, I have another error here. I need the word is in there. One of the main tenets of Thelema is the development of one's true will. We're going to be talking about the concept throughout the day, throughout this presentation, of the true will. What is the true will? Because will is what Thelema means. Thelema actually is the Greek word for will. And I probably should write that in here. Let me jump back and I'll write that right into this. And you see a little bit of what we'll be teaching in how to become the true media, which is modifying slides in a slideshow. It's what I do every week, and occasionally I make mistakes. So there, it's fixed. Okay. So I think that reads a little bit better. Thelema, the Greek word for will, is an occult philosophy. Let's even put that in inside. Hold on. There we go. I think that reads even better. Thelema, and then I'm writing in Greek, Greek for will, is an occult philosophy founded by Aleister Crowley in the early 1900s. One of the main tenets is the development of one's true will, the life path of a being who has raised their consciousness into alignment with universal spiritual law. That is the true will. Regardless of what anybody else is going to attempt to tell you about what something like do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law means, which we will talk about that information. We will talk about that phrase, okay? And we're going to talk about what is the true will. What does that phrase mean? What does true will mean in Thelemic philosophy? It means that you're on the spiritual path that you are truly meant to be on, that is your purpose in life. And people always leave off the second part of do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. They never put the second half of that phrase, which is love is the law, love under will. And we're going to be breaking all of those aspects of that main tenet of Thelema down. We are going to be talking about what does do what thou wilt mean? What does shall be the whole of the law? What does love is the law mean? What does that phrase mean? What does love under will mean? See, without understanding what the individual components of some of this philosophy are, what they are all about, you're not going to understand the totality of the philosophy. You have to put it all together. But this is in an overarching sense, this is what Thelema actually is. It is a occult philosophy, and it is ultimately about the alignment of one's life path to the will of creation, which is natural law. As just about every other occult philosophy, that's what Thelema is ultimately about. So let's continue. Again, that's what I'm explaining here in this next part of this slide. Like most other occult traditions, the grand purpose of the Thelemic philosophy is to guide its adherents to a deep understanding of natural law and align their behaviors to the will of creation, which would have a great impact in maximizing human freedom if people were to do that. If they were to learn any one of these occult traditions. As we talked about, what is Kabbalah's true purpose? Kabbalah's purpose is about helping humanity to align their behavior with the will of creation, with the will of the divine. It's about the understanding of the interrelationship between man and creation. It's about understanding all the inward qualities of the self and how they work in conjunction with karma, with universal law, to bring about the external experiences that we then must live with in life. Freemasonry is the same thing through its symbols and its allegories. It teaches us how to align our behavior with universal law, with the laws of the creator of the universe, or as it refers to it as the grand architect of the universe. Thelema is no different in that regard. The tarot, that's all it teaches in its pictorial symbols. The forces of the universe, the forces that are indwelling in the individual, and how they totally interrelate to each other as a system of correspondences through pictorial images. Rosicrucianism teaches the law of one. It teaches universal love. It teaches heart-based intelligence. That's what the rose on the cross is all about. The heart. That's what the five-petaled flower is ultimately about at the heart of the unicursal hexagram of Thelema. Heart-based intelligence. You know, the heart combined with then the power of the mind and the action of the body. So you have body, mind, spirit. The Trinity, united. So let's continue and talk about what the true will actually is. Because when people hear the phrase, do what thou wilt, they immediately believe that that means do whatever you want. And as we're going to talk about in the next slide, that's the exact opposite of what the phrase do what thou wilt in the Thelemic tradition means. And once again, you have to acquire this understanding by reading all of the material in the tradition. You don't just immediately pick up the first thing, read it, understand it immediately, and it tells you everything you need to know. If you're expecting that, don't even bother with Thelema. Don't even bother looking into it. You're going to be sorely disappointed. That's not what it's for. It's for delving into something so deeply and not initially being able to grasp it, that you turn your mind over to it until you gain a deep foundational understanding of it. It's when you read encoded material, it's forcing you to think at a higher level. It's forcing you to think at that correlative level. And that's deliberate. Crowley was doing that deliberately. And then he claims he did some automatic channeled writing, of course. So who knows, the consciousnesses that were giving him some of that information, if you believe that, may have been doing that deliberately. They're encoding it deliberately. I have some homemade watermelon juice today. If you've never Folks, just as a complete aside, obviously, nutritionally, it's one of the most hydrating things you could drink. If you've never juiced watermelon, you have to do it. You just must. And I mean, get a fresh watermelon, juice the whole thing through a centrifugal juicer with the rind, with the skin and rind. This is technically a green juice, believe it or not. The bulk of what's in there is the green rind, and you could consider this a green juice even though it's like reddish in color. But the balance between the rind and the flesh makes the glycemic index go down, and it's ultra hydrating. See, the Thelemic tradition would include proper nutrition as well, would include taking care of the physical vessel, the alchemical aspects and treatments that you could do to keep the body optimal. Let's go back to what the true will really is. The true will is the opposite of your base desires, of what you want, what I want to do, the comforts that I want, the pleasures that I want. That has nothing to do with the true will. The true will is deferring those things and or keeping them at bay, at least to the extent that you can really focus on the higher will, the true will. True will, or Thelema, is defined in the Thelemic philosophy as a path of personal action that operates in harmony with universal spiritual law. I want to read that sentence one more time because I really want people to understand this and emphasize what is being said. It's the true will is a path of personal action. It's not your thoughts. It's not your emotions. It's not your desires. It's not your wants. It's not what you think should happen. It's not coming into total emotional well-being. It's not bliss. It's none of those things. It is action. That's the key word in there. True will is a path of personal action. It's what you do. Once again, wisdom is the top of the trivium, right? You have knowledge, understanding, wisdom. On the very top of the Kabbalistic tree of life, before you get to the crown, right? Keter. When you're so-called crossing the abyss, going into that higher triangle at the very top of the tree of life. If you look at the Sephirotic tree of life in Kabbalah. Before you get to that top triangle, what is the sphere that is there? It is not one of the Sephirot, but it is considered where the tree grows from. It is Da'at. D-A-A-T-H. What is that? Knowledge. That's the first step of the trivium. Then you go up to Binah. Binah is understanding. That's the second step of the trivium. Then you go over to Hokmah, which is the one right before the crown. It sits at the right-hand side of the crown, Keter. Hokmah means wisdom. Da'at is not even physical. It's the hidden realm of knowledge. That is the occult itself. That's the pure information and potentiality. And that's where the physical bursts forth from. That's the root of the tree. And then the two top parts of the two pillars on the tree of life, Binah and Hokmah. Understanding and wisdom. Understanding is an internal process. That's the second phase of the trivium. Once you have the knowledge, you have to make strides to understand it. Weed out not all contradiction. Weed out logical inconsistencies and contradictions. Come to an understanding of what all of that aggregated knowledge means. Then what are you going to do with it? Just having it and understanding it doesn't make you good. just having it and understanding it is going to accomplish nothing unless you do the right things with it. Well, when you act rightly upon that knowledge and understanding, that's wisdom. So wisdom is right action. See? So true will can be considered wisdom. It's a path of personal right action because it's action that operates in harmony with universal spiritual law, or in other words, natural law. When you've aligned your life path, your actions of your life with natural law, and that doesn't just mean in the negative, in the apathetic, not doing harm. It means teaching natural law. It means you're communicating what is right to other people. You're communicating objective morality. You're living in harmony with natural law because you become a servant of natural law. Ultimately, that's what creation's will is for its children. Whether anybody really wants to accept the truth of the matter or not, that is what we are here to learn to do. We are all here to learn to listen to the voice of wisdom. We are here to then become the voice of wisdom because the creator of the universe doesn't have a physical voice in the 3D world. We are to be that voice. We are to put the law of creation into effect through our voice. Help to express its understanding through our voice is a better way of saying it, so that people can then get it and then live their lives in alignment with it, align their behavior to it. And this is what Thelema helps us to understand, because it's practices which are often meditative practices, yogic practices, practices of really, again, looking at symbol and allegory and coming into a level of correlative thinking so that we understand natural law at a deep fundamental level. And then we're aligning our behavior with it. So, a path of personal action that operates in harmony with natural law. Distinct and separate from the base will, lowercase w. You notice everywhere I'm going to write the word true will, it's an uppercase W. When you see me write will lowercase w, that's I want. That's the ego. That's the personality. Okay? That's the role that one is playing in the world. Higher case W, capital W, uppercase W, is the true will of Thelema. Lowercase w is what do I want for me? My desires. My comfort, what I want to do, as opposed to what I know I need to be doing, should be doing, must do. Totally different. Distinct and separate from lower base desires. True will manifests from the interplay between the higher self and the whole universe. Once again, that's what the Kabbalistic tradition and the Tarot tradition show us when we study them in conjunction with each other, when we lay the tarot cards out on the two trees, the two Kabbalistic trees, the microcosmic tree and the macrocosmic tree. One shows us the path to the higher self, from base desires and being stuck in ignorance to self-mastery. The other tree shows us the forces of the universe, from judgment, when we remain in base desires and ignorance, to natural law, which is justice, when we have applied self-mastery. So that's where true will is born from. It manifests from the understanding and interplay of the higher self and all of creation. So it's the understanding of the self and the understanding of the forces that are at work in the cosmos, both physical and spiritual and behavioral laws. And the true will then, once we have developed that interplay and we have begun to develop the true will, that path of action will guide us, those of us who will follow it, who will actually do that action. Meaning they've come into a place of wisdom. It will put you on to your ultimate purpose in life. It will put you onto the purpose that you manifested here for. And see, I could say all day, yes, I'm bitter about, from an egoic point of view, from a personal point of view, I'm bitter I've done all of this work and the world is still completely enslaved. Let's face it, I got a big chip on my shoulder about it from a personal point of view. And I feel like I have that chip on my shoulder because I've been trying to explain to rock hard heads out there that you need to take action. It's not good enough that you know any bit of this. You can know every bit of this and it's useless unless you yourself are taking action based on it, because that's the whole and all-encompassing, all-important word in this entire exchange. If you don't understand that the true will is action, it's not about anything you want, it's not about what you know, it's not about what you feel inside, it's about what are you going to do? What are you going to do? If you haven't answered that question and then made it happen, you're not doing the true will. You're not on the path of the true will. You have no real purpose. You're floating through life not effortlessly, but you're floating through life aimlessly. You don't have a clear... See, this is what Thelema helps with. It helps for the adherent, for the student, the practitioner, however you want to look at that. 2, develop a clear picture of what they must do. When you really have a firm grasp of the Thelemic tradition, by reading its documents, by studying it, by really pondering what it means, not just even listening to the words, okay? This is a personal relationship. No one would then start asking the question, oh, what can I do? What should I do? I don't know what to do. That will be gone. Gone from you. And this is part of the problem. I think because people don't go deeply enough into esoteric knowledge and into the world of the occult, and they think all of this is bad because some other fucking moron told them, yeah, all the occult is bad and you shouldn't look in any of that. No, it's actually the most powerful information on Earth, in the cosmos in general, that the elitists don't want you to look at, so you stay a stupid motherfucker. That's really how it works. So once again, anybody's free to think of it however you want. Crowley was a Satanist. I'm not looking into Thelema. Fuck that. Stay a dumb motherfucker then. Stay a purposeless person, floating through life aimlessly. And you're not going anywhere else. You're coming right back here. You're going to do it again and again and again and again until your hard head fucking breaks like a rock. Until the ego gets busted down into powder and then broken down even more into nothing. You're coming back here forever until your hard head decides that it's the thing that is wrong and needs to change. But you're free to believe whatever the fuck you want and make that process as painful as you want to make it. The universe will let you have that. You're not hurting anybody but yourself ultimately. But part of the problem is you kind of are, because you're hurting other people that actually do want to be free with your ignorance. You know, willful ignorance does in the long term harm others. So going back to what I was saying, after I got Thelema deeply, there's no more thinking, what do you need to do? You know what you need to do. And you start doing it. You're not asking questions about it anymore. You're not dilly-dallying about it. You get on it. You see? Because you understand that you're here to take action. Not to go, woe is me. Not to go, what can I do? Oh, I don't know how to do that. This tradition makes you confront all your bullshit excuses. It makes you confront your laziness. It tells you the only one responsible for ultimately either staying where you're at or changing it is you. That's it. You are solely responsible. Other people have influences in many areas of life, of course. I'm not going to say that they don't. But ultimately, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. If you're not actively involved in taking action to change it, you're the one helping anchor it and to keep it there. You have to take action to make a huge weight move. And yeah, I get bitter because I've been doing this for, over 15 years. What has changed? Hardly anything. There's some more people who are beginning to grasp and understand the great work and do it themselves. Yes, that's happening slowly, all too slowly, but it is happening. But when you get on this personal path of action, it totally defines your purpose in life. And there's nothing better than living a purpose-driven life. Again, I could say I'm bitter because I'd quite rather us be free and have our lives to live as we see fit, which is how it really should be. That's the natural state of human existence. Anarchy and freedom is the natural state of human existence, having nobody rule. But because, unfortunately, there is slavery, those of us who understand the wrongness of that dynamic have to teach natural law. I'm confined to this path because of other people's ignorance. I could get on a path of wonderful self-expression and exploration of other things that I want to do. I've said many times I could have become maybe a musician, a painter, an inventor, who knows? I think I have all of those things inside of me. But I don't pursue them because I'm here on doing my true will, on my personal path of action that I know I must do and must be on, which is a constraint. And I do that of my free will, even though, like I said, the lower aspect of me can be bitter about it and have a fucking big chip on my shoulder about it. Not going to lie. That's the dichotomy, but it's ultimately unified. This is the idea in Hermeticism that, opposites can ultimately be unified. I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to do the true will because that's what I'm charged with to do. It's a bond. It's a constraint. All things being equal, meaning if we all have unrestrained our natural rights and they're not under attack and they're not being occultically, covertly constrained and taken from human beings by this occult priest class. If that were not the case, I'm not bound to do this. It would be a good thing to have this be common sense natural law. But pretty much if the enslavement of humanity weren't the problem, you could pretty much rest assured natural law is commonplace in that instance, in that scenario. See, when decadence goes into place and corruption goes into place and evil manifests like it has, that's when the true will of having to teach natural law becomes a constraint. It becomes a bond. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying I do it out of my own free will because I know it must be done. It's required. It's a requirement. That makes it a bond. It's like obtaining food. It's a requirement. You're going to have to do it. So that's a constraint. It's a boundary condition. That's what law is. It's a boundary condition. It's a set of conditions that are in place that have requirements, must be fulfilled, are always in place, are constraining, are binding. But one of the worst things that you could ever have really happen is to lead a purposeless life. To lead a life where you don't know what your purpose is, or you don't even care what your purpose is. And let me tell you something, folks. There's a ton of people in the world living like that. A ton. Just living with no purpose. So while on one hand, yes, I'll say I could be bitter and have a chip on my shoulder about having to do this work nonstop, it absolutely fulfills purpose. It has given me a purpose-driven life. And that's one of the hardest things for most people to find. How do you find what your purpose is to do? Thelema can help you discover that. It can help put you on that path if you understand it. So let's continue with more on the true will. Those who are in touch with the true will have eliminated or bypassed false desires and internal contradictions, and have accessed a deep connection with creation itself. Once again, doing the true will, you could say some people may completely eliminate base desires. Bypassing it or keeping a handle on them is one way of saying it, where I will still make the time to put together a nice presentation like this. I will still make the time to have my talking points ready of what I want to really discuss with people, make the points that I want to talk about and flesh out. Does that mean I can't ever do anything of my own in other time that I have during the week? No, I could still go out and enjoy myself, go see music, go to a dinner, whatever. It doesn't mean that you're put in a prison and living that 24/7 nonstop. But it means you're making that your life. This is what you're going to take a portion of your life to do, to express to other people, to teach, to communicate. Most people just will not make it their life. They will not make it a part of their life. They just think, I heard it and I understand it. And that's good enough. I'm basically a good person. I'm not harming anybody and I understand what's going on. It's still not enough. Not reaching out to others means you're allowing the voice of evil to be louder than everybody else, to be louder than you. See, if there's evil taking place and you're not speaking against it, you're not doing the true will. You're not actively involved in developing the true will, and you haven't conquered to the extent that you need to do the true will, those desires, those contradictions within the self, within the base self. See, it doesn't mean that someone living the true will has no base desires. It doesn't mean you live in an ascetic, monk-like lifestyle, okay? That's what you have to understand. Thelema is not that. No occult tradition is that, truly. Those ascetic traditions are largely Eastern and some Middle Eastern traditions, and they're not healthy, quite frankly. They're imbalanced. They're positions of extremity that don't lead to good places because you're putting one aspect of consciousness, spirituality, over another aspect of consciousness, which is physicality. Physicality and spirituality don't need to be seen as completely separate and never the twain shall meet concepts. As I teach in my work, and as people who really understand real spirituality have taught, they're one and the same. It's all consciousness. The body is part of that. The physical world is part of that. Matter is part of that. So you don't need to forever exterminate desires. It's not to say you're not going to have base flesh, worldly, selfish desires ever. You're not going to live for them to the extent that you will not get involved in the great work. You're not going to be controlled by them to the extent that you're not going to teach natural law, that you're not going to speak out against evil. Personally, it's, the idea that you could fulfill base desires from time to time and not be perfect. No one's going to be perfect. It's not, again, this isn't about leading a monk-like ascetic lifestyle for the rest of your life. No one's asking that or even saying that's a good idea. Again, I think it's a place of extremity and bad extremity and imbalance in consciousness. But what I'm trying to get at here in the true will is that you keep those things in check to the point where you are making the doing of the great work an absolute part of your existence. And I personally don't feel that there's any excuse for people not to do that. I think that we live in the type of culture and settings, largely here in what you would call the first world, Western civilization, the people I'm largely speaking to. We have the resources, we have the information, we have the connectivity, we have the time even, where we can dedicate a certain portion of our life to this work. And that is the beginning of the activation of the true will. And then in the second sentence here, I'm saying, as more human beings discover and achieve this state of consciousness, meaning the alignment with the true will, and beginning to do that, accessing that deep connection with creation, as more human beings discover and achieve that state of consciousness, the more human life will flow without resistance in the aggregate. Again, this is the law of freedom. In Thelemic terms, they call this the law of liberty. Crowley said that the liberty of human beings, he expressed it as the control of the state will be a function of the attainment to liberty of each human will. I'm paraphrasing. But basically, it's like as people are doing their true will, more and more, the state and the controllers will have less power and more freedom will manifest in the world. It's a function of the individual will. I'll see if I could even find the phrase. Give me a moment, because it's worth putting up here into the presentation. I'll actually add it in during the show. But this second sentence is what I'm saying. It's what I call the law of freedom. As more human beings are doing this true will, doing the one great work, teaching natural law, teaching objective morality, life will flow with less resistance. We will actually begin to get what we want when we do the will of creation instead of our selfish wills. As we become more moral and teach objective morality and spread objective morality, humanity becomes more free. As we refuse to do that and don't care about objective morality and let tyrants take over, humanity becomes more and more enslaved. As people will not speak out against tyranny, as they will not say what is wrong and why to other people, expect more tyranny to encroach, expect freedom to be curtailed more and more, expect more slavery. As morality increases, freedom increases. As morality declines, freedom declines. Not speaking out is a form of immorality. When faced with tyranny, when faced with slavery, to say nothing is an act of immorality in and of itself. Let me just say that again, folks. When confronted with tyranny and slavery, not to speak using your voice, to say definitively the wrongness of that state of existence is immorality in and of itself. Not to take action in that circumstance is a form of immorality. You are being complicit with the tyranny by not using your voice to speak out against it and speak truth to that form of absolute immoral power. I apologize for the background noise, folks. I can't control that, what's going on outside. Hopefully that's not coming through too much over the broadcast, but it's a warm day here in Philadelphia. I do have the windows open and I have the fan on in here, so if there is a little bit of background noise, I apologize for that. There's a dog constantly barking outside, and it's kind of distracting to me. But anyway, I think I've explained the true will to my satisfaction, so I'm going to move on. The phrase, "do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," is a huge expression in the Thelemic philosophy. You hear it over and over again, and people use this phrase completely incorrectly, don't know what they're talking about, to insist that this is a satanic ideology. And Thelema is basically Satanism, because it's saying, do whatever the hell you want. There's no consequence, there's no law, do whatever you want. Wrong. 100%, 1,000%, 1,000,000% wrong. Absolutely incorrect. If you think that, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And yet, every single solitary day, I hear some other fucking chump say, "Oh, Thelema, do what thou wilt. That's Satanism. Do whatever you want." You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And I have to just say it that way. I just got to come in strong just like that, just to get it right out there confrontationally. First, you're wrong. That's not what it is. That's not what it means. Yes, you're wrong. It's not correct. It isn't true. You're wrong. Let's get that first and foremost out in the open, very clear. And I've said this ad nauseum amount of times, and people will still insist. No, I'm right. That's Satanism. No, you're a dunce. You don't read. You don't understand. You don't have discernment. I do. I'm correct. See, sometimes people just have to be told like a little fucking child, unfortunately. Because it's so blatantly out there in all the information that a child could go look it up and find the incorrectness of the contention that do what thou wilt means do whatever you want, and that means Thelema is Satanism. A fucking 4-year-old can go find the contradiction to that. That isn't true. That's how much availability of information there is in that regard, regarding this philosophy. And people don't do it. They just roll by what they heard, by what somebody else told them, that they know nothing about from a first-hand perspective, because they haven't actually downloaded the material and fucking read it. Maybe that's where people should start with anything, is downloading the source material and reading it. God forbid. That involves an investment of time and effort. We can't have that. Can't have that. You got to make a quick snap judgment on what some other fucking idiot said. You don't know that? That's how we roll in the 21st century, boy. We don't read. So let's explain to the hardheads out there what "do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law" really means. As this dog barks incessantly during the entirety of my podcast today. One of the main precepts of Thelema is, "do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." This phrase is almost always completely misunderstood and taken out of context. Understood correctly, this most certainly does not mean do whatever you want in a purely selfish context. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law refers to the true will, which we just talked about was an alignment of one's personal path of action in life to higher, universal, spiritual, natural law. Meaning, if you align one's own will with the will of creation, that is the whole will of the law. That is the whole of the law. That is ultimately what the expression of natural law and the intelligent ordering force of justice in the cosmos is attempting to achieve. And it's what it wants us to do with our lives, to find that purpose and walk that path of action. Express it through our behaviors. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law refers to the true will, one's wholly aligned spiritual path in life, upon which we are guided once we have learned to hear and follow the higher self. Again, in Thelema, the true will and doing what thou wilt, meaning doing the true will, not the selfish will. See, do what thou wilt, capital W, will, would be symbolically and allegorically expressed as the Magus card of the Thoth tarot deck, Crowley's own personal tarot deck that he appointed to be painted. This is the Magician card in the traditional tarot deck. Crowley refers to it as the Magus, which is Latin for magician. And you could see he has the 4 elements there. And then the 5th element expressed as his crown chakra exploding with the serpentine energy up to the Grail and the wings of Ma'at. A lot of alchemical symbolism, a lot of Egyptian symbolism in Crowley's Thoth deck. You see then the baboon creature in the background there, reaching up to try to reach the Magus and maybe possibly pull him down from his perch there. And that represents our base desires, which we have to tame. They're always there. They're not gone permanently, but we keep them under control. And we don't allow them to pull us down from that path that we are walking, which is that thin straight line that the Magus is on. It's beautiful symbolism if it's understood. If it's not understood, people go, oh, it's a guy standing there with like a cup and a dagger, and they don't grasp what they're seeing. Because this is what people who aren't literate in occult symbolism do. They see things at just face value and they have no idea what any of this represents. You have swords, wands, cups, and coins, the 4 suits of the tarot, the 4 alchemical elements, coins representing earth, resources, bodily characteristics, etc. We have the intellect represented by the sword, or the dagger in this case, the wand, or the cup representing our emotions, our emotional intelligence and heart-based intelligence, and then of course the wand representing the will, fire. So air would be the intellect, the dagger, water, the cup, obviously, which holds water, representing the emotions, and then fire, the wand, which is action. We broke that down pretty extensively when we covered tarot and the 4 suits of the tarot deck, like the 4 suits of the playing card deck. And the Magus wields all of these tools because he's attained self-mastery over the base desires to walk the path of the true will and be the servant of creation and fulfill natural law. Hence, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. Brilliant symbolism. I like how he puts the baboon creature in there to represent the base desires aren't going anywhere. They're still there. We have to achieve ownership over them and not let them own us. I like some of the things that someone like Jordan Peterson says. I wouldn't say he has a total understanding, especially not of the occult philosophies out there, and definitely doesn't understand the power structure of the world as it truly exists. But one thing he said is that I liked, which talked about this restraining of the base instincts. He has a quote out there that says, a good man is he says, a man who isn't dangerous isn't a good man. You know, a truly good man is a very dangerous man who has it under his voluntary control. I may be paraphrasing slightly, but essentially that's it. A truly good man is actually a very dangerous man, has the potential for great destructive behavior, great violent behavior, or self-defensive behavior, if you would. But he's keeping that under his voluntary control. That potential danger that he represents. That's actually always a potential. Let's move on. And, just let me step back for a moment. That the part that we're guided on the path of the will toward our purpose, once we've learned to hear and follow the higher self, again, that is what's made possible through meditative, tantric, breathing, yogic practices, etc. And there's many other methods. Psychedelics could be one if you do it properly. Some people would consider them shortcuts. Some people see them as tools in a different sense. But that voice doesn't speak above a whisper. Our chatter is yapping away at 1,000,000 miles an hour at top volume in our minds. It's the thing where, like, you really ask people what they believe, and they say some of the most contradictory, nonsensical things about what they believe is going on, happening, what they need to do. When you just sit them down and say, really be in the room with that thought. Really focus on it. Sit in front of the mirror and tell it to yourself like you're trying to get the other image to believe you. And you'll realize how full of shit most of us are all day, every day of every second of the day. This is what these practices that are part of Thelemic practices are about. It's about having that conversation with the self and really have the conversation. Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I a coward? Am I on the path? And do I really have a purpose in life? Am I fulfilling it? I can honestly sit there and say, I've asked myself those questions. I've had the conversation in the mirror over and over and over and over and over again. I've conquered, to the extent that they're not owning me, those base desires and fears and contradictions not to do the great work, not to get on the path of the true will, and I'm truly on it. I could say it honestly. I can answer that honestly. How many people can? Most people, you are constantly lying to yourself. You're constantly saying bullshit to yourself and trying to get your ego to believe it. And most people will pick it up and go, yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah, I believe that. I can buy into that. See, it often takes somebody confronting you with your own bullshit for you to even hear what you're telling yourself. You know? It's part of the problem is that most people don't have anybody that will do that. People don't want to create confrontative scenarios. They don't like being in that state where, oh my God, he just said something that really hits home. People have done it to me in the past, and it's been an uncomfortable situation. And guess what? If it's true, I look into it and change. If it's not true, then I'll say, that's your opinion, and that's your advice. But there is a difference between it being true or not. Make no mistake about it. Has nothing to do whether you like what you're hearing or not. And see, that's part of the practices of Thelema. When you research them, look into them, do them yourself. They get you to sit there with those thoughts and weed them out. Weed out the inconsistencies. Weed out the contradictions. You eventually have a conversation with yourself where you're telling yourself how much bullshit you've believed, that you've told yourself, that nobody else even had to tell you. You're eager to tell yourself a handful of bullshit and believe it. And do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law is part of breaking that ego down. See, it's getting to hear that voice that never speaks above a whisper. That is the connection to higher self. You got to get the other chatter out of the mind, and there's techniques for that. For those called to the path of the true will, it refers to the one great work of truth, love, and freedom. That is what the true will ultimately refers to. The true will is to align oneself with higher will. What does the higher will of creation want for all of its creatures? It wants people to be free. It wants people to be happy. It wants freedom from suffering that is self-inflicted. Obviously, there's going to be some forms of suffering contained in life. Again, the Buddhist tradition talks about that, and that's a big part of Thelema. It mixes some of the Eastern traditions in with the Western mystery traditions. It's a very aggregate tradition, a tradition with which coalesces a lot of other mystical traditions and occult traditions. Buddhism is a big one, which one of the main tenets of Buddhism is that life contains suffering, or a better way of saying it is suffering is contained within life. The Buddhist teachings never anywhere in the original teachings of Buddhism say life is suffering. This is a total bastardization of the Buddhist tradition, which is a huge part of the Thelemic tradition. Never anywhere was it ever written or said life is suffering. That is a bullshit New Age and or dark Buddhist variant of the phrase suffering exists within life. Suffering is contained within life. Life contains suffering. It has suffering within it. By its very essence, by its inherent nature, living will contain within it certain aspects of suffering that one must endure. And what that ultimately means is some forms of suffering are self-generated, some are not self-generated, but the overwhelming bulk majority of suffering is self-generated. And if we learn how not to create that suffering, we won't experience it. It will be alleviated from us. That's the path of Buddhism, the noble path, etc. Now you have the noble truths and then the noble paths. And, one of the noble truths is there is a method for not generating those forms of self-inflicted suffering. And then the path shows you how to do that. Very similar to the Thelemic path. To get on the path of the true will is to begin ceasing creating that self-inflicted suffering by doing the great work of teaching natural law and teaching objective morality so that it becomes common sense. And that is you being a servant to truth, love, and freedom, instead of doing whatever you want and being a coward and not talking out against evil and tyranny. Continuing with this paragraph, do what thou wilt in a Thelema context is literally the exact opposite of the phrase, do whatever you want. Literally dipoles, diametrically opposed opposites. Nothing to do with each other. Over here is, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Over here is, do whatever you want. And never the twain shall meet. Complete opposites of each other. For anybody who truly understands it. For imbecile assholes who don't know what the fuck they're talking about and who insist Thelema is something that it is not, they want to make them equivalents, which they are not. They're exactly extreme opposites of each other. Do what thou wilt is the apotheosis of freedom. So I'm continuing this sentence from the one before. Do what thou wilt in a Thelema context is literally the exact opposite of do whatever you want. It is the apotheosis of freedom. That means do what thou wilt means because you are serving creation's will, and because ultimately that will is for the freedom of all, for true freedom to manifest and for every being to be sovereign. It is the elevation of freedom to the position of godhood. That's what apotheosis means, elevation to godhood. And indeed, that is what truth, love, and freedom are. That is what God is. God is truth, God is love, God is freedom. And ultimately, all three of those things together is natural law. God is law. That's the law is the boundary condition. You could call it symbolically represent that as a circle and then put an equilateral triangle in it. Truth, love, freedom. Again, that is why the all-seeing eye design is what it is. That's why I use it in the One Great Work and One Great Work Network and What on Earth is Happening. Sell t-shirts with it on it, etc. That's why it is the little icon of the One Great Work Network. Because the boundary condition is natural law. That's the circle. And then truth, love, and freedom are what it is bringing into manifestation in the physical world. That is the godhood. Truth, love, freedom. They're the expressions of it in the physical. Hence, the triangle is the basic, geometry of nature. And the circle is the perfected shape that represents the construct. Represents the underlying ordering intelligence that is the creator. Do what thou wilt is the apotheosis of freedom and the strictest possible bond. This is what I talked about before. It's a constraint. It's the law. Okay? That's what natural law is. And that's the bond. Okay? You're bonded to that in life. Meaning it's not really an option. You know that in times that are not equal, like what we're living in, a state of slavery, you must do this type of work. The true will doesn't have to be that. Let's say we were living on a planet where everyone's rights were respected, everybody knew natural law, everybody knew objective morality and aligned their behavior to it. Let's say almost everybody. You're still going to have strayers from the path. It's bound to happen. But let's say we dealt with that in a natural law capacity, meaning we just took care of it. We don't build prisons. We don't constrain other people's rights. We just take care of the problem. That's how it would be done in a natural law society. You could call that brutality if you want, but guess what? It would cleanse the place of those disruptor agents that want to try to get their hooks in and convert other people to their misery and low consciousness mindset. That's exactly what it's like. People in that deranged state of mind of wanting to be controllers, it's been likened like a sick person on a being carried on a gurney and attacking all the people that are holding him up on the thing that they're carrying him on to get him to a hospital. That's what they do. The sick then attacks and harms other people and tries to make them like him. That's what the whole dark occult mindset is and does. That's what the psychopath is and does. So if we lived in a place that already understood natural law, and we didn't have to worry about the total destruction of our rights, and we essentially lived every day with our rights intact, the true will would not have to be doing this work all the time. You would have this work out there naturally in the course of the knowledge of the people of the planet. It would have to be that way for that condition to manifest in the first place. So then, hey, what if I wanted to become a master sculptor? I could turn my will over to that. That could be my path in life. That may be my purpose, to express beauty and potentiality of what a human being could do in something like that. Maybe I want to invent some new piece of technology. And that could be my true will. So when I say at a time when all things are equal, again, when they're not equal and we're living as if some people are gods and other people are their slaves, like we are now, the true will of just about everyone is constrained. It's a bond. It gets bound up, and it all comes together where you don't have that potentiality to say, I'm going to go be that master sculptor or that master painter or that master musician or that master inventor. If you simply go and then follow that path, that's not the true will, because the true will has to align with the will of creation. On a planet where rights are intact, someone going and inventing something new to help bring higher expressions of consciousness, potentiality, the development of the species to higher levels of complexity, etc., would be the will of creation. For a planet whose people don't understand rights, don't understand what a right is, what a wrong is, what natural law is, why we shouldn't be enslaving each other, why there shouldn't be government at all, for a planet that ignorant, the true will of all is to first get that planet and all the people on it to that base level of understanding of morality and natural law. So where we're at now on this planet that we call Earth, which is a hell world, it has devolved into a hell world. There really is only one true will. Because to follow any other path than the one that would create truth, love, freedom is to go against the will of creation. And I can say I understand that. I can say that's a true statement. Most people will say, oh, that's what you think. No, it's what I've come to understand. If you just give it some thought quietly alone and really deeply contemplate it, you'll understand right now not to do the true will of the one great work is literally telling creation to go F itself. You're as Jordan Maxwell said, you are screwing with cosmic justice. And screwing with cosmic justice is only going to bring anybody that does that one thing, cosmic judgment. Again, that's the law of freedom. Not teaching morality and natural law in a place where we're already enslaved is complicity with the evil that's already in control here. That's why so many people's lives can't flow effortlessly, and there's so little prosperity in most people's lives, because we've let such injustice and iniquities and evil breed everywhere all around us, with largely unchallenged running amok. Do you think the universe is going to give us what we say we want selfishly with a lowercase w will, when we're not serving the higher case w will, and people think we deserve anything better than what we have? They think they personally deserve anything better than what they have? That's the exact reason we're in this place, is because so many people selfishly choose to do what they want to do for themselves because it's more comfortable. Because they don't really want freedom. They don't really want truth. They don't really want love. They want what they want for themselves, which is being a selfish prick. That's called being a selfish prick. That's not doing the one great work. That's not doing the true will. Certainly not advancing the will of creation. It's advancing the selfish will of the individual. Once again, I have a selfish will. Everybody does. Who doesn't? Wonderful. Who cares? It's like saying somebody, has an anus. Everybody does. Everybody's got a mouth. The whole point is that doesn't make you unique. Getting a handle on that so that it doesn't control you will make you unique. That'll put you on the path to mastery. And again, it's not about being perfect. It's not about leading an ascetic lifestyle where you shun every pleasure. By no means is that my life. It means you make doing the true will, you make doing the one great work the most important aspect of your life, and everything is secondary to it. Because if you're not doing that, you're not living a purpose-driven life, and you're certainly not fulfilling your true will. Especially on a planet that is as fucked up as this one. To go and just turn away from doing that will and go live your selfish will really, really does put you in a bad karmic place. And in a terrible position as a human being. And you still can't get people to understand that. They're still going to live their selfish lives, their selfish ways, because they're ignorant, they're apathetic, they're cowardly, and they're lazy. The four murderers of consciousness. Ignorance, apathy, laziness, cowardice. They have such an abundance of one or all of them. One or more or all of those murderers of consciousness that they cannot come out of that lower state of consciousness. Something in some form of trauma is holding them there. It's like a weight on top of them. It's like something that has them. It's like a cage. We're going to talk about the head cage a little bit later in this presentation. And that is what's binding them. They're not bound to creation's law. They're not bound to truly do what thou wilt. They're letting that baboon creature there in the background bind them. The selfish desire, the ignorance, the laziness, big time, the cowardice. It's a big one that stops everybody. I don't want to put my voice out there. I don't want to put a target on myself. I don't want other people to see me. I don't want other people to hear me. Just so much fucking fear. It's pathetic. It's fucking pathetic. And you know what? The bigger fear that they really should be focused on is what they're actually doing to their soul at a cosmic level by not getting involved. And again, I could say this forever and ever and ever until the end of time. And there are people who are still going to just say, fuck it, I don't care. I'm not going to do it. That's your soul. That's on your soul. No one else. That's on you and your soul. And believe me, you will definitively deal with that at some point. You may not deal with it in the flesh and in the physical, but you're gonna deal with it. You will be forced by the universe to deal with that and confront that. And I don't really understand people's fear like that. It makes no sense to me. It makes zero. I'm not in that mindset, thankfully. It's one of the things I have a lot of gratitude about. I would never want to be that person. Again, I look at it in the example, allegorically, of the movie they made about the Greek demigod Achilles, allegedly the greatest warrior of the Greeks, who's going to go into battle against the enemies of the Greek Empire. And he's getting ready to go into battle, I think possibly against Persian armies, and in the movie Achilles. And a child, maybe a teenager age, says to him, "Aren't you afraid?" And he goes, "No, I'm not afraid." And because he knows what he has to do. He knows the forces he has to confront. He knows he has to go into battle, and it's an allegory to go into spiritual battle. And he says, "No, I am not afraid." And the kid he's talking with, the boy, says, "If I was going to be fighting that army, I'd be very afraid." And Achilles looks at him right in the face as a small child, as a young boy. And he says directly to him, "That is why no one will ever remember your name." And it's not in an egoic sense of, I want to go down in the annals of history and have my name remembered. It's not that. It's not the ego place he's saying that from. He's saying that's why you won't be a truly great person. You won't be anyone that anybody wants to ever talk about and remember. Once you're dead, your name will be forgotten forever. It will pass like a snap of a fingers from the living systemic memory of creation. You won't be anything. You will be remembered as nothing. Because you didn't do great things. Because your fear held you back from doing what is right and what is great and what is true and what is good. That's the allegorical aspect that Achilles in the movie is saying that to the child. I should play it. I should download it and play it. Maybe I'll do that. I'd like to, maybe add that Jordan Peterson quote, the exact wording of it. I want to add that quote from Crowley about the will of the state. I should have put that in the presentation. Maybe I'll do that after the slide. I'll just download a couple of things. Maybe we can read from a couple of Thelemic writings as well. But I want to get through the philosophy. So, continuing with this, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law" is the apotheosis of freedom and the strictest possible bond. In Crowley's own words, "Do thy will and no other shall say nay." Once again, that goes back to what we talked about in the last part of this slide, in the last paragraph. That if we are doing the true will, especially in the aggregate, universal forces come to our aid and human life begins to flow effortlessly without resistance. That is what "do thy will and no other shall say nay" means. Radio host, his name is slipping my mind, used to say, "Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid." Very similar to this phrase, "Do the will and no other shall say nay." Jack Blood, I think his name was. Yes, Jack Blood. Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. Do the will and no other shall say nay. That's it. Courage. It requires courage. I should put the strength card up for that as well, because that's the strength card from the Thoth deck is a huge aspect of Thelema, the development of courage. Cowardice stops so many from the true will, from the true spiritual path. They can't get over something. There's something in them that's incomplete. There's some part of themselves that doesn't love themselves. You know, I won't let fear stop me. That doesn't matter to me, because if you know that your consciousness is infinite, what's dying here going to do? Transition the consciousness from one form to another? So what? It's probably happened to us millions of times already. More likely than not. Continuing with do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law is one of the precepts or tenets of Thelema. To align one life with the true will is to work toward the state of true freedom for all. To focus largely upon selfish desires and you could say not even focusing on those desires, but letting those base desires and or instincts like cowardice, like trauma, hold you back from doing that great work, from being on the path of the true will, is the same thing as letting that baboon creature still have hold of you and to take you off the path. To focus largely upon selfish desires and or let cowardice get the better of you will ensure that obstacles arise for you in every aspect of life. Every aspect of life. What your purpose is, where you want to be, who you want to be around, relationships, resources, etc. They will all have resistance. There will be something that will fight you every step of the way, unless you're really on the path that you're supposed to be on. Every act we conduct that is not in harmony with the true will is erratic and will act as a hindrance in our lives, both at an individual level and at a collective level. Once again, the individual wills are comprising ultimately the behavior of the collective, of the aggregate. And as aggregate morality goes, as the quality of aggregate behavior, either in harmony with objective morality or out of alignment with it goes, that's how the whole aggregate of society goes. And then we get the result, order or chaos, freedom or slavery, good or evil. It's really not that hard to figure out, folks, if you know the basics of natural law. And if this is just different wording. Again, Kabbalah, just different wording, same ideas. Freemasonry, different wording, different symbols, different rituals, same idea. Rosicrucianism, different wording, different nomenclature, different symbols, same idea. There's nothing new under the sun. You see? That's what that really means. You're not learning anything new here. If you weren't familiar with Thelema, but you were familiar with true Freemasonry, it's one and the same. If you weren't familiar with Thelema, but you really have a firm grasp of natural law, it's one and the same. There's nothing new. In Thelema, there is a concept of higher love, and this is referred to as agape. The Greek word agape, written there in Greek letters, alpha, gamma, alpha, pi, eta. And again, agape, pronounced agape. It's not agape or agape, right? So Thelema is spelled with that eta before the mu alpha at the end. Theta, epsilon, lambda, eta, mu alpha. Agape is spelled alpha, gamma, alpha, pi, eta. How do you pronounce agape? You don't say agape. You wouldn't say Thelema. It's Thelema. The eta is a long A sound in classical Greek. That's not in question. So, the correct pronunciation is agape, just like the correct pronunciation is Thelema. And this refers to true love. So you have true will, not lowercase w will, but big W will. Agape is big uppercase L love, not the other forms of love, the lowercase L love. Agape is true love, which is a different expression of love from romantic, familial, or even brotherly or platonic love. In the Greek language, different forms of love were given different words. The word eros, transliterated in English eros, in Greek it's epsilon, rho, omicron, sigma, final sigma. Eros means romantic love. That is the love between man and woman, between partners, life partners, etc. Whether they be man, woman, man, woman, woman. Doesn't matter. Gender. It's not about physical gender. Eros is life partner, romantic love. Physical love. And then the word philos, transliterated Philos, where we get the root from the word Philadelphia, right? Love of brother, philos delphos, right? Which is love brother, brotherly love, the city of brotherly love. The word philos in Greek, written phi, iota, lambda, omicron, final sigma. And actually, I should put the final sigma. That's not the final sigma. Let me try and write that in there the way it's supposed to. And it's still not coming out. No, I have to put that in there correctly, because at the end of the word, I don't believe it should have that. It should have the regular final sigma S. Give me a moment. I want to correct that while I'm doing this, actually. This way I don't forget when I put the slides out. So just give me one moment to correct that. I'll keep explaining it while I'm doing this. You know, philos is love of people. It's love of family. It's, you know, basic platonic love, as separate from romantic love. I think I have the character that I want now. It's not the right font. Just give me one more moment and I'll correct this. But these other two forms of love, eros and philos, is not what we are referring to when we talk about a higher expression of love that comes from higher consciousness. These are forms of love that we express toward people, right? So in a romantic relationship, eros would be expressed. In a family, philos is expressed, or between just friends, you know, you'd be expressing philos. Platonic love. I still can't find the character, so I'll probably have to just let that go and fix it on my own time. I'll have to look at a program that will allow me to get that character set correct, because when I typed it in, it transliterated it from English and it didn't give me the final S. I need another program to do that, and I don't have it installed here, so yeah, that's not going to be possible for me to do on the air, unfortunately. So I'm going to step back into the slides and let the error be there, where I should have the final sigma instead of the regular sigma. But I will fix it before I put the slides out tomorrow. So agape, on the other hand, means love that comes from a higher state of consciousness. It is love of all beings. It is the desire for all beings to be free in their rights, free, not in bondage, not in slavery, and for the desire for all beings to be free of suffering, to the extent that that is possible. Agape is universal love. Some people call it unconditional love. I personally don't really like that term, because that means if it's universal, there's no real conditions applied to it. But to word it as earthly unconditional love means like you'll keep loving somebody even if they're evil. And it doesn't mean that. That's not what it refers to. If you look up agape, you'll get a lot of the Christian tradition, because they use the word in many Christian traditions as well, to mean unconditional Christ-like love. I would say agape is similar to that, but I personally would not use the word unconditional, because that makes people think in two physical terms of you'll apply this mentality no matter how evil what someone is doing is, and that's not really what it actually technically means. I like the term universal love. It is love that extends beyond all boundaries. In that sense, it's unconstrained. It isn't to people. It is the love of truth and freedom themselves. It's the love of what is right. It's the love of justice. Okay, so it's the love that binds together truth and freedom in the equation truth, love, freedom. Okay? That is ultimately what agape is. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about agape. And of course, I put the Lover's card there to represent that. Let's move on and talk a little bit about Gematria, or occult numerology. It's huge in Thelema, and Crowley really applied Gematria to a lot of what he did. He encoded symbolically words and concepts in number in many of the writings that he did, in book titles, in concepts in books, in many cases just straight out wrote in number. And in studying Thelema, you're going to come across numerology for certain. So let's look at what Gematria actually is in just any form of occultism, but especially Thelemic numerology. So in Thelema, Gematria is a form of occult numerology. In Gematria in general, the letters of words are converted to numeric value. So let's say my name, Mark, in English Gematria, right? So you could put up an English Gematria table like M has a value, I believe it's 13, right? Let me actually just look it up real quick. So and I have a bad spelling here. Let me fix that. Gematria has one M. I spelled it wrong a couple times here. Okay. I think I got it fixed. No, it's spelled wrong there. Okay. Doing all kinds of editing. So, here's an English, I'm looking at an English Gematria table. And M is 13, but then you reduce the M to 4 because you add the 1 and the 3 and 13. So the second letter of my name is A. That's 1. First letter of the English alphabet. So if we add the 4 and the 1 together, we have 5. Then R. R is 18 in the English alphabet. 18th letter. The 1 and the 8 add together to form 9. A 9, as we will see, acts as a 0. But we can add it together with what we have so far. 4, 1, 9. Right? So that's 14. And we add that together, we're back to 5, which is what 1 and 4 are. So that's how the 9 is a 0. We're going to see this in a couple moments. How 9s are always 0s. But let's go to the K now. K is 2. Because it is 11. It's the 11th letter of the English alphabet. 1 and 1 is 2. So we add that together, right? 4, 1, 9, and 2. 16. 1 plus 6 is 7. So my first name, Mark, in English Gematria is a 7. That's how you do reduction in Gematria. So we're going to do Gematria on the word Thelema and find its value in Greek Gematria on the next slide. Let's look at some classical occult Gematria. The number 666, depicted at the bottom of this table on the left, always represented incompletion. 6 and 7 in numerology, in the occult world, are incomplete and complete. 6 is incomplete, 7 is complete. 8 is perfect, and 9 would represent total union, but also in a different aspect, nothing. Union to the point of completion versus 0. And you could look at that as coming full circle. 666 always represented base consciousness, incompletion in thought, emotion, and action. If we ascribe one letter of the trinity of numbers to one to each aspect of consciousness, thought being in a state of incompletion or imbalance is ignorance, emotion being in a state of incompleteness, non-achievement, would be apathy, and our actions remaining in a state of incompleteness is cowardice and laziness, that which stops you from taking right real-world action. That is what 666 has meant in different occult numerological traditions. Man in base consciousness, the beast. In Thelema, you'll hear the term the great beast, or Therion, Megatherion, the great beast. It's a reference to the beast of Revelation. But ultimately, that 666 is the number of man. In the book of Revelation, that's what it is said. It is the number of man, not of a man, but of man. Meaning that man is in that incomplete state. Humanity is in that incomplete state, meaning mankind. Thought, emotion, and action in an incomplete, inactive, and contradictory state. So then do the Gematria reduction. 6 plus 6 plus 6 is 18. 1 plus 8 is 9. You just keep adding them together. That's all you're doing in reduction. It's very simple. People try to make it more complex than it really is. Gematria reduction means adding together the individual values of letters in a word repeatedly until a single numerical value is reached. For example, 777 which is the next one we could do, representing man in unity consciousness. The thoughts, emotions, and actions are complete. They're activated. They're unified. There's no contradiction. It's intelligence. It's true care, true love, and then true will, which is right action. Courage, right action. Very simple concepts representing consciousness, but then expressed through number. To encode them, to encode it. Because at times and places you couldn't teach this. You could be murdered for teaching it. You could be tortured for teaching it. And so people have come up with ingenious encoding systems, including the tarot, including occult gematria, including allegorical stories, etc. So 777, do the reduction. 7 plus 7 plus 7 is 21. 2 plus 1 is 3. That's the reduction of 777. So in Thelemic gematria, it is generally accepted that words which reduce to the same numerical value actually share the same meaning. And my slides are fraught with error today, but that's okay. We'll fix them on the fly. So, anywhere you would see 777, you could say that's equivalent to 3, gematria-wise. So 3 would represent man in unity consciousness. Again, the Trinity. Thought, emotion, and action. Body, mind, spirit. Father, Son, Spirit. Or Father, Mother, Son. Ultimately, the mother is the heart, the spirit of that equation. And then the divine child, allegorically, is right action. So it's a male aspect in the father, mother, male, child, son, Trinity. And 9 would be the reduction of 666, which means it has the same meaning. Base consciousness adds no value. Anything you add a 9 to doesn't change the value, as we just saw. We had already 5, M and A. M is 4 in English gematria. A is 1. That's 5. Add the 9. 14. 1 plus 4 is 5. No change, because you already had 4 and 1. 5. Any number you add 9 to, you could just do it. So add it to the 3, for an example. 12. 1 plus 2, 3. You're back to 3. Let's take the 7. Add the 9. 16. 1 plus 6 as the reduction. Back to 7. Adding 9 is adding 0. So anywhere in a gematria reduction, if you see a 9, just cross it out. Don't add it, because it's 0. Gematria-wise, it's a 0. Numerology-wise, it doesn't add value because it represents unconsciousness. It represents deadness. It represents being totally in base ego-identified consciousness, which adds no value. You can't change anything with it. You can't change value for the greater with the 9. You see? It's something I've been explaining numerologically, why it's a brilliant understanding. You can't add 666 to anything and change its value. Try to do it. Start with 7. Add 666. 666 is 18. Right? Okay? 18 plus 7 is 25. 2 plus 5 from the 25 is 7. You're back to 7. 666 is a 0 in gematria terms. So what 666 represents is base consciousness that can change nothing. It can't add any value, just like 9 can't add any value. When you multiply anything by 9, you get more of 9. 9 times 2 is 18. 1 plus 8 is 9. You're back to 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 2 plus 7 is 9. You're back to 9. 9 times 6 is 54. 5 plus 4 is 9. 9 times 7 is 63. 6 plus 3 is 9. Anything you multiply by 9, you only get more of 9. Multiplying base consciousness gets you more base consciousness. It's just like a brilliant conceptual idea put forth in number. And it's not that hard to understand. So the idea of ascending out of base consciousness is to go from the beast to complete consciousness or unity consciousness, to go from 666 to 777, or to go from the 9 to the 3. And this is where we get the number 93, representing the journey out of base consciousness, from the 9 to the 3. Now, we're going to look at an even deeper Thelemic numerological understanding of the number 93 in the next slide. And this is that both words that are two of the most important and foundational concepts and principles in the philosophy of Thelema actually total the exact same number when we break them down into Greek Gematria. And that means that in the occult tradition of Thelema, in Gematria terms, they actually are the same thing and they mean the same thing. They are one and the same. Thelema is Agape. To do the will is love, is true love. The true will is true love. To do the will is to enact higher love in creation. And of course, anybody that understands natural law knows this, because to enact natural law and to teach natural law, that is to be the servant of the force of justice that ultimately rules creation. You're at the right-hand side of that. That's the Hanged Man card on the tarot that sits at the right-hand side of the Justice card, which represents natural law or the Godhead. And it is one and the same with performing an act of true love. That's to do that great work is to live in heart-based higher love consciousness. So Thelema means the true will, not to be confused with will with a lowercase w. And it totals 93 in Greek Gematria. In Greek Gematria, theta is 9, epsilon is 5, lambda is 30, eta is 8, mu is 40, and alpha is 1. You add up those numbers and you get 93. 9 plus 5 is 14, plus 30 is 44, plus 8 is 52, plus 40 is 92, plus 1 is 93. Thelema in Gematria terms equals 93. And again, we have that concept of going from the 9 to the 3. The 9 is actually a 0. It's the Trinity again, thought, emotion, action. Unified, on one accord, united, aligned with the will of creation. On the other side, we have the word agape in Greek, representing true love, not to be confused with love with a lowercase l, the eros or philos forms of love. It also totals 93 in Greek Gematria. Alpha is 1, gamma is 3, alpha is 1, pi is 80. You would actually pronounce, people say pi in the Greek, in the actual ancient Greek, the letter is simply pronounced p, like the English letter P. It's not pi. There's no long I sound in Greek unless you combine alpha and epsilon. Then you have the sound I, from I. So truly in ancient Greek, the letter that we call pi in English is P, is pronounced P, P-I. Or it would be pi iota if it was spelled out in Greek. So the eta at the end is 8. So let's add them together. 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 1 is 5, plus 80 is 85, plus 8 is 93. So when we have two equivalent numerological values in the Thelemic Gematria system, it is ascribed that they mean the same thing. And they do. See, that's the beauty of it, right? It's not something that's nebulous here. You're not trying to say, truck equals angel or something like that, not things that like don't quite make sense. Here, the attribution works, and it's perfect because the true will is true love. To align one's will to the will of creation is to be in a harmonious act of love. It works out perfectly. And that's why the number 93 is so important in the Thelemic tradition. There are other numbers that have a lot of numerological significance, which we could briefly touch on. So we saw the number 93. Thelema, will, totals 93 in Greek Gematria. Agape, love, totals 93 in Greek Gematria. Therefore, they essentially mean the same thing. True will and true love are equivalents of each other. The number 93 represents ascension out of ego and duality consciousness and into love, will, and unity consciousness. As we saw, to go from the beast to the perfected being, the 777. That's not considered being God. God's number in Greek Gematria would be 888. So man still is not the perfection that the Godhead is, the three infinities, perfection in thought, emotion, action, but it's completeness in the physical form in thought, emotion, and action that you're going to reach in the physical domain, but still not God. So you have 666, 777, and 888. So again, to go from the 666 base or beast consciousness to the 777 man in God-like consciousness, in unity consciousness, non-contradictory, unified consciousness, is to go from the 9 to the 3, 93. And again, 93 reduces to 3, so it is the equivalent of 777. To say 93 is to say man in non-dual unity consciousness. No contradiction in thought, emotion, and action. Completeness in thought, emotion, and action. Another number that's important in Thelemic numerology is 77. That's missing one of the sevens. And that's why you always have to incorporate the heart-based intelligence and love. That's the foundation of everything. That's the law. Love is the law. We're going to talk about that phrase. See, if you're not coming from that heart-based intelligence and it's all intellect and ego, you're operating at the 77, the 77, which is falling short of the 3 sevens. So if you have 2 sevens out of 3 sevens, you could look at that as 2/3, right? And it is true because the reduction, 7 plus 7 is 14, right? Then 777 is 21. That's 2/3 when you reduce it. If you divide by 7, you get 2/3. And then convert that to decimal and you get a repeating 6. 14 out of 21, 2/3, which decimally is, in decimal terms, is 0.6666666. Total incompletion. Forever. Eternal incomplete if the heart is left at the door. That is sorcery. That is intellect combined with egoic will, right? That's truly do whatever you want. So if you see the 7-7 and it's not being actively unified with the other 7, right? There is a concept in Thelema, you could see 77 by itself, but there's always another 7 to unify it with to bring it into balance. But 7 7 or 77 left by itself unchecked is sorcery. That's to do the egocentric will. That's the dark occult. Intellect combined with egoic will, but devoid of true care, devoid of the heart-based intelligence. And then, of course, 77 is just one short of the number 78, which is the total amount of cards in the tarot deck. So you're taking one card short of the book of life. And ultimately, we know what card would be the short end of the stick if you remove truly the heart-based intelligence and true care from the 78 of the tarot deck. Ultimately, you're taking the Fool card out, which represents the soul. Because to take the heart out of the equation of the Trinity is to lose the soul. So ultimately, all of this has to come out of true care. And that doesn't mean mushy, wishy-washy love. It's not eros. It's not philos. It's not romantic love. It's not even care for people. It's care for truth. It's care for what is right. It is care for freedom. It is care for justice. That's the type of heart-based intelligence we're talking about. That has to be the foundation of everything. That doesn't mean let's all unconditionally love everybody even if they're murdering our children. That's not what it means. It means I care about what is true. I care about what is right. I care about freedom for all. Agape love. Once you remove that, you've destroyed the soul. And that's where most people are at in the world today. They don't care about what's right. They don't care about truth. They don't care about love from a higher perspective. They don't care about freedom. They have no true care for anything. They don't even want to know what's going on. They want to live selfish, purposeless lives. And that's basically the destruction of the soul and being turned into a golem, a flesh robot. So very powerful that removing the 1-7 gives us the number that is one short of the total number of cards in the tarot. And obviously you're removing the first card of the major arcana, the Fool, which is the soul card. The number 23, another important number in Thelemic Gematria, representing getting out, escape, but not in escapist terms, meaning escaping mind control. The term 23 skidoo was a big thing in the 1920s or 30s. Trying to think when it even originated. I think it was the 1920s. It meant like getting out of the situation that you're in. Like if you're in a social function and you really don't want to be there and it's uncomfortable and you need to get out of there and go do your own thing, you know, people will call it ghosting now. You did the 23 skidoo. You got out while the getting was good and easy and zip, you're out, you know. This is, in Thelemic terms, a reference to that time period. Obviously, you know, I believe Crowley lived into the, I think he lived into the 40s. I have to get his exact birth and death date, but certainly this was a popular phrase, a pop cultural phrase during the time that he lived, and he incorporated it into some of his writings. In one of them, he actually calls the paragraph or the little section that he's talking about skidoo, and it's the number 23. It's the 23rd paragraph of the writing. Little play on this turn of a phrase back in the 1920s, 23 skidoo. Getting out while the getting is good. Get out of the mind-controlled thought prison into which you have been lulled. Get out of the head cage. And that's the whole idea, is it was don't wait. Get out while you can, while the information is available, while you have the opportunity, because these sorcerers of consciousness are going to be refining their techniques and making it harder and harder for people to get out of the head cage of mind-controlled consciousness. So that is what he's saying the 23 represented. Take advantage of the opportunity to get out while the getting is good. Then we have the number 418, which is obviously adds to 13. 4 plus 1 is 5 plus 8 is 13. Again, a number associated with traditionally bad luck. But in this case, Thelema ascribes it to a magical term of manifestation. What in other forms of magic was abracadabra, in Thelema it is abrahadabra. They call it the word of the aeon. It is the word that means the great work has been accomplished. Or at least what you are trying to bring into alignment with the will of creation, that an aspect of that has been done. And the word abrahadabra translates as I create as I speak, or as I speak I create. It's what I talk about all the time in my work, that the universe is spoken into existence. We create the situation that we are experiencing by the power of our voice. And if we're not using our voice wisely, we're not creating wisely. If we're not putting the information out there to others with our voice, because of whatever problem we have doing that, whatever courage or block, whatever lack of courage, cowardice, trauma, or block we have going on in our minds and in our whole personality that is disallowing us from doing that, or acting as a preventative or a stressor in that regard to not allow us to do that, we are not putting our voice forward and doing what is right, what we know we should be doing, especially at a time of tyranny and slavery. So, he called this the word of the Aeon of Horus, because he felt that in Thelemic worldview, I guess you could say, Thelemites and Crowley himself looked at that we were emerging from a time period that was a darker time period and a constraint on human freedom, a constraint on human potential. And certainly that is true. He looked at that we would be emerging if a true occult revival were to take place in the world, driven by people in the modern age putting this information out, would give birth to what he referred to as the Aeon of Horus, which was the bright, conquering solar child, meaning that light would be coming to the world, the light of knowledge, the light of truth, the light of the creator of the universe emerging, and it would be enlightening souls with knowledge that they would carry on to others and use their flame to ignite the flame of the minds of others. So it's a great concept, the Aeon of Horus. And again, it represents the great work being accomplished and manifesting a better result for everyone. So 418 is a pretty positive Gematria numerology attribution in Thelema. The next concept in Thelema I want to cover is what Crowley meant by magic, which he spelled with a K, as opposed to the traditional spelling M-A-G-I-C. He spelled it M-A-G-I-C-K to distinguish it from forms of illusionism, basically pop culture magic. He's not talking about the magicians that go and make, the Statue of Liberty appear to disappear, which is all little nonsense tricks and misdirection. He was talking about actually using the power of the voice and the power of suggestion to truly influence the minds of other people at a distance. So this is what I've been doing since day one, straight out in the open, making no bones about it, just outright telling people. I consider myself a magician in the sense of the Thelemite tradition, because what it really means is to influence others with the power of your voice. Influence others by educating them. Often, or almost always, at a distance, not even having to be in their presence. Communicating the sound and power of the voice, the vibration of the voice over long distances with technological means. That's magic. If I could change one person's life, that's magic. Magic has been performed. Think about it. You've never touched the person. You've never actually physically been in their presence. You got ideas to them that they paid attention to, listened, that were expressed, that were then understood, that were translated into their understanding in their mind, and then they acted upon them and changed their lives for the better. There's no better definition of magic. In Thelemic terms, magic is seen as, and is defined as, the science and art of influencing change to occur in accordance with the will. Notice, capital W, underlined, the will of creation. So I'm not performing magic if I'm selfishly trying to get what I want and influence people to help me obtain that. I'm performing magic if I'm explaining to people what is the will of creation. How do you align your personal will to that? How do you align your behavior to that? Do you understand objective morality and natural law? Are you initiating harm? Do you know you need to stop doing that? Are you lying to yourself about what's really going on in the world? Do you know you need to stop doing that? How do you do those things? What kind of sacrifice might you have to make to do those things? It involves sacrifice. But the magic itself is when you're actually attempting to, almost always, at a distance, influence change to occur in accordance with the higher will. Crowley and many other occultists of his time period, like Helena Blavatsky, distinguished magic from what they referred to as sorcery, what I would call the dark occult, which is the diametric opposite of magic. It is to attempt to influence change to occur in accordance with one's own selfish, lowercase w will, the will of the sorcerer, the will of the practitioner of that influence or manipulation. See, that's where it's not even influence. It's manipulation. You know, I could write it like this. That's a better definition. Sorcery is the attempt to manipulate change to occur in accordance with one's selfish will. I don't even have to say attempt. Better. So that was the difference in Thelema between magic and sorcery. And I talked about that very early on in What on Earth is Happening work in the earlier podcasts. The next concept in Thelema is known as the Holy Guardian Angel. And I'm just going to briefly touch on it. We'll have to continue this next week because we're rapidly running out of time. Crowley's seen the Holy Guardian Angel as a deep connection, a deeper connection to the higher self, which would then help guide us toward our true will and our ultimate grand purpose in life. But for that to manifest in our lives, we have to learn to listen to its wisdom, the path of right action that it's telling us to undertake by quieting the voice of the ego. This is what some of the Thelemic practices were about, to help us to hear that voice, meditative and yogic practices. Crowley called his own guardian angel Iwaz, whose name also totals 93 in Greek Gematria. So I think this is an excellent place to leave it, and we can continue talking about that at the beginning of next week's show, where we will do the philosophy of Thelema Part 2, and we'll expand on this even more next week. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this episode of What on Earth is Happening. Remember, government is slavery. We'll see you right here next week, everyone. Thank you.